like to double check on that.
Okay, so in terms of getting it set up, so when you wants to do that, basically just put them in.
Okay, you need to switch off.
We're still missing a couple of people, so we're gonna wait another minute or two.
Sure. Do we have any volunteers for Jabber Scribe?
And minutes. Okay, we really need somebody for minutes. This is a great way to contribute to the work of the IETF. We're going to have, I think, fairly contentful discussions today, so it would be extremely helpful if somebody would step up and volunteer. Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna get started. I assume I'm audible. As you know, this should be familiar by now. This is a note well that guidelines for basically IPR around participation in the IETF and sort of who owns your utterances. Okay, the agenda for today is we've got some administrivia to take care of. We did the note well. We've got minutes and Jabber. We've got blue sheets going around. Now's the part where we bash the agenda. First thing is to do a status update. 6962 bis, follow-up obtaining proofs. That doesn't belong on there. Basically, it's 6962 bis follow-up. We're going to talk about short-lived certificates. Name redaction / privacy is back with us again. Wait, this is just the wrong, yes, this is, no, it's the right one. Okay, some of this is not, log monitoring API we're not talking about, but we are talking about new work and the working group futures. Since we're winding down the deliverables that we have defined, we've talked a lot about potential new work. Nobody's really brought anything in, so we're going to discuss that a little bit towards the end of the session. Status update, charter's unchanged. We currently have 17 open tickets in the issue tracker, 0 on the BIS document, 3 on gossip, 7 on client behavior, 5 on threat analysis, and 2 that don't specify a component. 6962 BIS, we need a revision based on AD review. Thanks very much for the comments, Ecker, and thanks very much to the editors for responding to those. Redaction, there's been intermittent activity on that. We got a new draft come in just a little while ago, and we're going to be talking about that a bit today because it does present a new use case. The threat analysis is stuck. We need additional text. I mentioned this briefly to Ecker and to Paul, and basically what I'd like to propose is that Paul or I just knock this out, get it done, and wrap it up. There's just a little bit of work that needs to be done. There's some logistical stuff in terms of turning the document back into XML or to Markdown. I'm happy to do that. I just want to get this done. We haven't discussed this with the authors, but the first thing to do is make sure that we've got agreement here that it's okay, agreement with you and agreement with the ADs. So Ecker, I mean, is there a process problem with us doing that?
I mean, you need to get into the, yeah, sorry. I mean, you'll need to hum for consensus on this new text.
Understood.
But I mean, as far as I can tell, like, that's the key verse, working documents that you get, you get word consensus in the text.
Okay, but you don't care where, I mean, you don't care where it comes from.
That doesn't seem like
Okay,
So,
okay, excellent. So, yeah, so are there objections in the room to us doing that? All right. I don't know if we need a hum on this since there aren't any objections. It will go out to the mailing list before we actually do this. The gossip document, we need a revision, again, based on AD review. Linus is remote and is going to be talking about that a little bit. Client behavior, you know, we've got some open tickets against it. It's something that comes up at every single meeting and we still do not have a draft. So we're going to talk about that again towards the end of the meeting. So I guess Linus is up next to talk about gossip. As I said, he's remote, so let's see if we can get him in.
To clarify for the minutes, the draft that you're proposing that the two of you not got test for is the threat analysis?
Exactly.
And I think actually it's more of a text removal than a text addition, but
That's
But,
kind of
yeah,
knocking
so-
out the text.
Yeah. So I think Linus has to request, he has to join the queue. Is he there?
And he was.
I mean, he's in the queue. Is he on Jabber? No, he hasn't joined the queue. All right, we can circle back around to that.
Oh, he's just talking, so.
he said he's going to queue.
All right, it's not showing up on the, there's no participants in the queue. Let's see. Okay, are you there?
I don't think he's properly in the queue.
No.
So Linus, I don't think you're actually properly in the queue because you don't show up here as a Pac-Man waiting in the queue.
Right. There we go. Okay,
Should I be talking more?
no, you're good. Let's,
Oh.
okay. Yeah, you've got the floor.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I found the hand and I pressed it, and now I'm supposedly talking to you. Great. So this is the history. This has been running since late 2014 actually, and early 2015 it got into the state where we are today. And this is the previous version of the slides, but I can probably use that as well. Let me see. I think you uploaded the more recent version, Paul. Can you find it? It's in the meeting materials.
Yeah, it's uploaded. I don't have it on my laptop.
Okay, never mind. It's not a big of a difference. So let me find the one that there. Okay, I just wanted to mention on this slide that we have the basic idea of gossip as defined by this draft is three separate mechanisms. One is called SCT feedback for sending SCTs back to originating HTTPS server, which can then send it further after removing, identifying components of the data sent to an auditor. So this is for sharing SCTs with an auditor. And the next mechanism would be STH pollination, which is meant for sharing STHs to other clients, basically to other HTTPS clients, which in turn will share it with auditors in some, for now, unspecified way. But the idea is to share STHs with other parts of the ecosystem to be able to find out about a log that is doing some sort of splitting attack. And the last thing is something called trusted auditor relationship, which is for an HTTPS client to be able to, if it doesn't want to do SCT feedback or STH pollination, it can, if it has a trusted auditor, it could share it directly. So this is basically just defining a protocol for talking directly to a trusted auditor, as opposed to the indirect ways of talking to an auditor through the SCT feedback or STH pollination. Next slide, please. So we are now, we had AD review, thanks Eker and thanks Richard, and we have responded to that on list for the important parts, and we are ready to clarify open questions and to adjust the stuff that is questioned. And if we decide to move forward and go into publishing, we have a couple of open questions that I think we better bring to list if we decide to move forward. And next slide, please. So the only thing I think we should decide right now is if we're gonna publish this, if the working group should think that this is useful for publishing, or if we should rather break it apart or remove certain parts and basically do a refactor of the document, as mentioned on list the last week. Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion of this? I mean, how closely have people been following the gossip document?
So who has read the document? Okay, not too many. Okay, so we should just take this to the list.
Yeah, this is gonna go out to the mailing list. Do you have any comments after all this? Jan, what's the, already
Yeah,
done?
I said,
Yeah,
no, we
okay.
haven't heard it yet. Apparently, he's in, actually should be fair.
Okay, all right, I guess the next thing up is 6962 bis. None of the editors are here, I believe, and there's nobody who really speak for the document. Oh, unless somebody pops up, but I don't see anybody, okay.
I guess I went through, I just, I did that. Everybody else did microphone, I went. I'm not sure if it's working either. There we go. Yeah, so I went through, the revised version. Not on? Let's see if that- There we go. Yeah, so I went through the revised document. It seems like most of the things I've identified were addressed. There are a few more things that I think aren't quite right, but seem like relatively straightforward. So I anticipate that I should be able to respond to it relatively quickly, at which point I can start moving forward in the process.
Okay, excellent. All right, next thing up is short-lived certificates. I think you've got this here. Yeah, and the whole box thing.
Yeah. Okay, so whatever. So the idea is to draw the attention of this group to the how to cope with short-lived certificates. That would imply, and this is would imply some, I mean, not changes, some additional stress on the current practices and the SCTs, etc. The rough estimate, thinking that well, we will around issue certificates that would live for 24 hours, and that the average certificate that, for example, Let's Encrypt is issuing is 90 days, yes. That would be multiply this by 100, the number of entries and the, well, that would imply if there is some additional stress, but would imply some changes or would require some changes in the structure, the implementation, the pruning, etc. The point is that there is not completely sure that is a real problem. There is some, there was a message from him saying that, well, that should not be a problem, simply it's a matter of numbers and that would be doable. But probably, well, there are other ideas that it could, and this is something that we should just to consider. Let me say, this is just the problem statement. It's not that they are coming with any solution. Next one, please. So there is a proposal from a paper in which Aaron is one of the authors. A general proposal that is about whenever there is a CA that is issuing short-lived certificates, and instead of using the an SAT with the entry of the certificate, is to put a Mercature root there and make a reference to another one, which is if you think about that, is a little bit aligned with the old saying of the additional level of indirection to solve any problem. And this, in theory, can be there is no limit. You can have this referring, and in theory, someone could make another reference to another tree root. The point is that this is a proposal from a paper, a research paper, and we are not sure whether anyone has implemented this or has plans to implement this.
I'm not here to answer your question. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand what this proposal is. So
You mean this one?
yeah,
Okay.
unless you don't really want to talk about this proposal.
I'm not sure what the proposal is, but essentially, it's this text is coming
Sure.
coming directly from the paper.
Because I don't actually see how this solves the problem. Because the typical reason you want, I mean, well, it depends on what you're doing, right? But if you're gonna, is this the idea that the CA is going to withhold the certificate somehow? Because my point is that if you give all the certificates to the user at once, then you know that doesn't work, because the compromise of the key is the same impact, right? And misissuance is the same impact.
No, well, the idea, I don't know. In the general case of the short-lived certificates, it's not to deliver all the certificates at once.
So, yes.
But you can't form the Merkle hash tree unless you have them all, right?
So what I understood was one of the use cases was that you get a number of certificates, say one certificate per day with a different public key, and so you can switch identities to prevent tracking. So you use a new identity every day, and therefore you get a whole set of new certificates.
That's another use case. Well, not necessarily the one we are originally considering, but yes, that's another. Yes.
And that doesn't work for web server certificates, right? I guess so. I guess I'm skeptical this is a real problem for several reasons. The first is that with the current state of clocks, there's no way we're going to anywhere near a day. We're lucky to get a week. We're only talking an order of magnitude more. The situation currently, because as Al points out, Let's Encrypt is the dominant certificate issuer now. So it's not clear to me we can't just get an order of magnitude more. Like just by turning up the crank on the ordinary mechanisms. This, as I say, it's not clear to me this solves the problem that you'd be interested in. Maybe it does. But as I say, you have to. If the typical reason for short certificates is to make revocation easier, right? And revocation can only be easier if the person whom the certificate is misissued or compromised can't just roll the certificates day by day. So if I have 90 certificates in the Merkle tree, then it's not going to work, right? So maybe I'm going to hold them and hand them out one day at a time. I don't know, but it's only part of the system. It sounds like.
No, and you're right. This is let me say this is something that could be a generic solution. It's not that by far even is not even the solution we are proposing, because it's something that we found.
This is actually the intent of this work was not to solve the short-lived certificate problem. It's to provide a privacy mechanism, right? So the work is actually focused on something else and does not address short-lived certificates. It may be that it's useful for that. But yeah, this was a different problem.
In fact, if you look at the original paper, has sort of 8 or 10 pages, and this discussion is a couple of paragraphs. So it's apparently something that, well, by the way, we have thought about this as well, and here it is. So Well, let's move to the next one, which is, why I am here and why Thomas and I have prepared this is because we're interested in the STAR case. That's in particular, which is STAR is an enactment station extension to allow the a CA to issue a series of certificates, short-lived, associated with the same private key. It's not intended for tracking, for avoid tracking. And the idea is that in this extension for ACME, what you can do is precisely that the owner of the name can control and do something that we don't want to call revocation, but it has the same effect that is cancel the regular issuance of certificates by the CA. So in effect, the effect is like a revocation that takes at most the length of the first originally, well, the last issued certificate. So so it can be canceled at any moment, and the advantage is that, well, it removes the dependency of the revocation infrastructure and other problems. Something that as well is important when discussing this on the list. Somebody pointed to the credential delegation in TLS. This cannot be only, I mean, it has delegation use cases, but it's not only for delegation. The idea is simply you generate a string of certificate associates, you get an automatic periodical renewal according to the long period that you have done, unless it's canceled by the name owner. So that's the STAR case. Next one, please. So when analyzing this, we believe that the STAR case is a little bit different because you can think of it as a single long-term certificate that is made as a collection of these short-lived certificates. It's not that we are changing a case at any moment. And in principle, again, it could be possible, or what our claim is that we could think that it could be treated as a single entity, a single SCT associated with it. For example, there is another email from Iran on the trans list about this, analyzing and requesting that and saying that some changes to the current RFCs would be necessary because it's not exactly when we are claiming here, it would not be exactly what they say there. But for example, instead of issuing the SCT having a serial number, it would be about a range of serial number because the CA would be able to get to share that information with the log, for example, and that instead of the not before, not after would be the ones associated with this entire lifespan of the string and not with each one of the individual certificates. So what we would treat this would be we would treat this as I said as a one single certificate associated with a long string of certificates that are renewed. That's all. As I said, it was about stating the problem and asking the group for whether it's interesting in addressing this and look for a solution.
So I have a question without a chairhead. So basically what you're creating with this is a sub-CA that is sort of not created via CAP forum rules. And so now you can have it.
No. It's a CA. It's the same CA. The only thing is that you are asking the CA to renew the certificate.
Yes, but so you're getting a wildcard certificate that you use on 10 servers and then it gets...
No. It's one certificate associated with a private key. It's not that I mean...
You've got a CDN that wants to be able to renew a subscriber's certificate without having the subscriber request it. So, I mean, it's delegation in some sense, but it's not really delegation in the sense of effort subcert.
But thinking about it, we found that it's not only delegation. Delegation was the main use case behind it, but in some other cases in which generating the certificate request, and for example, in IoT scenarios, etc., when generating the key and making all the requests, etc., would be complicated. We have found that this could be a solution as well. That's why it's not only, or we try to remark that it's not only delegation.
Questions or comments? Are you going to the mic?
I'm just gonna take it out. I'm not lowering the mic. Hi, I'm Deb Cooley. I'm from NSA. So can we walk through a scenario to make it clearer? Through a example. Can we
through
walk
an
through an
example of
example?
this, a
Of
star
this?
example.
Yeah. So let's say you want a certificate or a series of certificates that last 6 months.
Yeah.
And so you contract with a CA and
Mhm.
say, I want a cert every 2 weeks,
No, every day, why not?
every day,
Yeah.
whatever you want, right? So, okay. And I want to use the same key for the entire 6-month time frame.
Yep.
Okay. Same name, same SAN, same private key, same public key.
Yep.
So the only thing that changes is,
And
Huh?
serial number.
And the serial number.
so
Yep.
the serial number changes, the dates change, and obviously the signature changes. Okay, so in the CAB forum rules, you have to have random signatures, right? I mean, random serial numbers, right? Quasi random? No, no, they don't, which is, we have an issue with. Okay, but this whole deal about a range of serial numbers is kind of like an issue, right?
No, I mean, no. Hold on, well, sorry. No, go for it. Okay. No, I mean,
I could hand him.
this, you having, yeah. No, it's simply is that's a range of serial numbers is just a suggestion. Again, it's something that
Oh, I see.
it could have, for sure, it could have implications. And instead of a range of serial numbers, you can simply say, this is the initial serial number and the number of certificates that has been
So
requested.
even if you had a list of serial numbers that were random, 20 bytes random, blah, 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 right? It could be whatever you wanted. They wouldn't have to be
Yeah,
like in
no.
sequence or anything, right? Okay.
No,
so
exactly.
I have a series of, I have a set of serial numbers that I can use for this. The CA would issue these things however often it was and hand them to the user every day.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
every half day, because it's the idea
Well,
that to cover, yeah.
So with some period, some
It
frequency.
will become available, yes.
And you would want to log them in a CT log every,
No, the idea is precisely to avoid that. I mean, we can go to the CT log every moment in which the certificate is issued, and then you treat it as a normal certificate and forget about it. The point is whether the only question here that was at the beginning of this is whether this is an issue for CT or not.
I see.
I mean, in the worst case, the current estimate, thinking about a one day certificates in comparison with 90-day certificates, it will be multiplied by 100, 2 orders of magnitude. If that's enough, and those of you who are implementing logs are happy with that and don't think that that will be an issue, fine, forget about it.
Okay.
If you believe that there can be some issues, this is a proposal for the case of STAR. Simply that.
So have you worried about CA processing time? Because if you want SCTs inside of those certs, you've got to apply for those in advance, right?
No, I mean, the CAs, if a CA is only dedicated to this, we would be generating 100 as well. But
This is entirely Acme based.
Yeah.
So it's-
it's pure. The idea with the implementation we have right
So it's
now is
all
based
automatic.
on Boulder. So
Okay. So let's say you want to cut that 6-month time short to 4
Yep.
months because you've lost the key, you've decided you
simple.
don't want to do this anymore, or whatever. You go back to the CA and say cancel it.
Yep.
Okay. And you're good because
the CA is not going to
you
issue more
just won't issue
certificates.
it, everything will expire.
Yep.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's the idea.
What?
Sorry, Paul with no hats. But aren't we protecting against malicious CA? So if the CA keeps on handing these out, and
Well, I think the point in this case is not a malicious CA, but how do you get rid of revocation?
Because you simply don't
Because
need
you've
it.
lost the key.
So this is Daniel Kahn Gilmore from the ACLU. So I don't actually think that this puts us in any worse posture for revocation than without it, right? I mean, I don't know that it's better. I think it's actually just basically the same thing as OCSP stapling.
So I think that after thinking at this for a bit, the conclusion I came to was that the posture, I mean, so the problem CT's always had, right, is you don't know if the CA is actually revoking, right? And certainly you don't know if they're not continuing to issue bogus OCSP stapled responses to the fake server, right? And so shortlist certificates without OCSP stapling fix that problem for the if you have must staple, right? So shortlist certificates fix that problem because then you can't extend it without reissuing a certificate, and CT friends you can do that, right? That's what right. So what I'm saying is that basically this gives back basically this gives back the the win you just got by winning shortlist certificates. So it seems to me that like this is that if you think of it, this is the same as issuing one certificate from CT's perspective as issuing from the enforceability perspective as issuing one big certificate with lifetime with the entire batch set that is covered under the tree, right?
That's the point.
Right. So yeah. So but the point being it gives back the win you just got by shortening the certificates if your purpose was to get verifiability.
So I thought the other issue was sometimes revocation wasn't being checked at all by perhaps browsers, say.
Not all browsers.
But some browsers.
So if you have must staple, then you have to check the certificates. And if you have must staple, then this seems like the complete moral equivalence of must staple.
Yeah.
So it's not clear to me what the win is with this as opposed to must staple. And the advantage of must staple over this is that we have the infrastructure in place and we don't need to change the logging mechanism at all, right? So there's some process that the server goes through to get its new copy of the certificate. The certificate has the same public key, private key information. If that process was going to the OCSP responder and getting a recent OCSP response, it seems like exactly the same thing as this plus short-lived certs. So how does it differ?
Except it's perhaps easier
And
for the CA because all you're doing is issuing a new OCSP response as opposed to issuing a new cert.
You don't need to go to.
Wait. Why don't you do must staple? What?
No problem. Oh, we have to stand. Okay, this is for Linus. He says, where is it? He can't tend to the Meet Echo room right now. So, as a log implementer, a two order of magnitude increase, he thinks is okay. Not sure. And as a log operator, I note that this is going to affect the cost of operations. And I asked him.
So it's not the problem. Fine. I mean,
Well, no, he didn't say
Yeah.
it's not a problem. He said he
that's
doesn't
only
think
look
so.
like a problem. Yeah.
I mean, if you really think you're doing a day, we have lots of other problems with CT too, where like the whole like public verifiability apparatus starts to fall apart because of the MMD. Like I guess I think the more plausible scenario is that we have certificates that are now issued with lifetimes that are commensurate with the current OCSP stapling lifetimes, which is say 1 to 2 weeks. And that seems clearly within the capabilities of the logs to jack up by a factor of 7 to 10. So I guess I don't think this is I don't think there's a problem we need to solve today. At some point, maybe we'll be on like millisecond level certificates, then we have to worry about it. But I don't think that's a problem we solve today. Because like I say, I mean, it's not safe. It's currently not safe to issue certificates with lifetimes substantially like short of like what a week, David? Would you say? What would you say like the shortest certificate you'd be willing to think about issuing would be like a week or two? Yeah, the Facebook data shows it's pretty bad when they talked about TLS, that people are like routinely out by a day. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the question is where that leaves us, and it sounds like we don't have enough information or enough agreement that this is something that we need to work on here.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one additional thought about who might be paying the costs for increased size of logs. It's not just the log operators, it's also anyone who's auditing, which becomes significantly more expensive to trawl through the entire log for the
Well,
data that
I
you're
mean,
interested in bandwidth as well as in.
I was gonna say, one of the advantages of this particular data structure is that lookups are very cheap, right? So,
Right, because the log itself only contains the head node, the root node.
You mean if we go with this proposal?
Yeah.
Sure, this proposal or OCSP must staple don't change the size of the logs, right? But if we do change the size of the logs, it's
No, actually, you still audit this. You still audit this to be sure you know that hiding that tree isn't some.
that's what I'm saying. So if we don't do this thing and we ramp up the frequency of certificate issuance, the size of the log goes up, and also the amount of bandwidth that someone who trawls the whole log looking for their stuff is going to go up by the same factor. So that's a significant factor that's beyond just the cost of the log operator.
Well, I mean, this is now like way out of scope, but it seems like the extent to which we're at that, we should be thinking of data structure, which made it easier to find individual names inside the tree. Yes, right. VRF or something like that, right? Actually, only.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. I'm thinking KT is the opposite, right? But you store. It's like NSEC 5, right?
proof of exclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of interest in short-lived certificates anyway, and there's a list of problems associated with that. And I think you're having sort of a side meeting this week to, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Just to mention it, Thursday evening at 6, I'm having sort of meeting. I'll send a message to this list and SUG, because I only sent to the 100 attendees, about the operational and security considerations of using short-term certificates, or more likely for giving up on revocation checking, not revocation. So, and this is one of the things that we're going to mention, but not a lot because we're talking about it here. And there are other issues such as with clocks and stuff like that. So, so there are now with my ACME chair on. So yes, there is this draft in ACME. There's candidate draft in STEERS. There's interest all around for using short certificate. A lot of that is not the web. A lot of that is some closed environment that has multiple nodes, and they're all using certificates. And in that case, there probably isn't a log anywhere around. And in that case, this doesn't matter. But some of these places do have logs, and some of it is the web. So there might be an intersection between short-term certificates and the web and the logs.
Okay, I did take a quick look at your draft, and the CT section is TBD, so
Yeah.
there's an opportunity here for interested parties to provide input.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, we'll mention to the mailing list that this discussion happened. As I said, it doesn't sound like there's a place to go here yet, and we need to understand the problem better. All right, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is name redaction.
Hi. Okay. About name direction stuff.
Sorry.
So far.
Yeah, no, it's done.
Yeah, it's about it's about name reduction, which was presented by draft strat trans name reduction stuff 01. Name reduction was taken out of 696 base document at IETF 97, and that draft was expired on July of this year. And discussion was those draft discussion was focusing on privacy stuff. And my concern about name reduction stuff is some IoT devices might be outside the scope of CT4 Web PKI, but we want to use server certificate for those kind of IoT devices. And I'm explaining next slide, but we should have interoperability with non-web like PKI certificate, web PKI certificate, I think. But like there is a problem that like there is the increase of number of IoT devices is increasing quite dramatically, and that is problem, scalability issue, and also there is some other like physical security issue for IoT devices, and I'm going to present that or later slide. So far, for my opinion, like that draft strat trans reduction 01 seems to be fine in terms of mechanism. So I just want to discuss about that. Okay, next please. Oh, okay. We use server certificate for IoT device anyway because TLS is very well defined. Like we want to use that. But like, yeah, in the device, they use so many devices, but those devices will like communicate to each other. And in that time, like with TLS, one of like communication party will use server certificate. And I will raise use case of surveillance camera. First of all, like well, we can have, like for example, if there was surveillance camera and I access with with my smartphone and find out that surveillance camera is correct surveillance camera or not, and then connect and communicate. And we are planning to use TLS for this kind of purpose. And since like we don't want some surveillance system for surveillance camera, like we are thinking about to use TLS, and because we use consumer device like smartphone or whatever, we are planning to we want to tie to public root certificate authority, and we are thinking about over the certificate update or something. For example, if you pay like every monthly payment, then certificate will be renewal or something like that. Next, please. And also to to identify, like for example, surveillance camera physically, like some information is very useful. For example, like geo information and model or like devices or lot number of product or whatever. So if, like, for example, if there is a camera and that have a like room number and building number on that certificate, we can like identify certificate. And it's very easy for the guy who just accessing to smartphone, camera and watching the movie, but also some people for example, like maintenance guy or what. Yeah. For that kind of like information, we want like put those information into the certificate to manage the IoT device easier. However, those information are quite useful for some attacker. Like for example, like, if you know like lot number and well, if you know the model and if you know the place, you can attack like physically attack the camera and do whatever. And if you know the lot number and like model of the product for so many like same devices, not same models devices, like you can easily get botnet. And actually there are some like how to say database for helping to construct botnet, which lays like every single, not like so many IoT devices. Hiding those like information is, or like Ryan from Google said, security through obscurity, but like it's, I think, part of like security. It's a bit different for like information. It might be different for information security view, but it's physical security view. Like for those, like if we log every single certificate to log server, attack surface may increase with CT, and I think it's not a good idea in terms of scalability and security. Yeah. Next. So far, like in like draft trans name reduction one, like they laid 3 methods, like wildcard one and name constraint intermediate one and domain level reduction one. And it's quite very bad idea to use wildcard one for IoT devices because we need same key, right? And so basically I think it is good to use name constraint intermediate one, and that seems fit with my station, and use of domain level name reduction one. And for that one, maybe able to, like, for example, even if the domain level, like part of domain level was like covered, service may be possible to identify service provider or device vendor without showing identity of device might be good. Yeah. My question was if it is enough to, like, in terms of the number of the mechanism, is it enough? For my use case, I'm wondering if there is any better use case. Yeah. Next please. So I just write whatever. There are three methods. Well, like without deduction, technical constraint, name constraint intermediate stuff, and domain level reduction stuff. Prime method is fine, but like I'm not sure like the number of certificate used in IoT device for like next 10 years or whatever, but I believe they are increasing. And for that, like, oh well, the certificate will logged onto the CHT server. So like service provider or device vendor kind of cannot put those kind of important information. And then they need to build up some different trust framework or something like that. And for technical constraint one, it's good to, in terms of log server, not logs, in terms of server, in terms of the like burden, like computation power of the log server, but like you cannot detect misassurance, I guess. Yeah, and CA need to build name constraint intermediate CJ, and it may have a lot of operation cost. And for domain level stuff, in my station, like it might be not that useful, but if, for example, if like monitor want to find out misassurance, but only want to see like company or service provider, like device vendor or service provider for recall stuff, so something like that, it might be useful, I think. But anyway, if those three methods are enough, no, not three, those two methods are enough for my station, I won't draft like that name deduction drag back with some consideration with security and scalability. If it have any better method, like I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Any discussion?
Well, if you're going to use redaction here, you're going to get a lot of entropy in the redacted part of the name, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, typically the reason people want these names is because they actually want to be able to type them in, which means you want serial number dot domain name, and that's not really going to work if it's like serial number plus 160 bits of like random crap, which you're going to need. I mean, well, at least like 80, right? Because otherwise they'll just dictionary search the rest of the information out of the redacted labels. He wants to hide the LHS of the label, right?
Yeah, but you can hide it without, I mean, you can completely hide it. Like literally redact, not hash.
The Strad has hash.
Okay. Well, that, I mean,
I think
the previous version just had a question mark.
Right,
okay.
It said this label is redacted.
and this is what Semantic wanted to do as well. Hashing was response to some problems with the credential name conflicts and so on. So there are actually two different ways of treating this in the documents that we're talking about.
This is DKG. I wanted to ask why you've got geo information as one.
Yeah, on the certificate here.
Yeah, it's not clear to me why you would need that to be in the certificate itself.
Oh, it's not like necessary, but it's help like to management, like service providers management. And Yeah. Well, for example, if there is a camera and if I have a smartphone, I want to identify smartphone without connecting somewhere else and showing database. If that like camera show every single information to physically identify that camera, and if it were trust it, I trust and find out like identify camera without like communicating other external databases. If it were like totally random number or whatever, I need to communicate some external like each company's external.
But couldn't the camera report its own geo information without it being in the certificate? What's stopping the camera from saying this is my location?
Yeah. There are several ways to put like those information, but like for that, like, easiest way is putting certificate, like those information to certificate. So if you want, you sometime like sign by some root authority for vendor or whatever. But anyway, if I don't want to communicate external database, the easiest and how to say, like the simplest way is to put geo information on the certificate.
So do you contemplate then with the domain label redaction column that the CAs that issue these certificates would actually put geographic information in the certificate? And if so, what requirements would they have to verify that location information before they put it in the certificate?
Oh yeah, that's so true. For geo information stuff, like I was thinking about to use name constraint intermediate, but yeah, actually it's true. Like for domain level reduction stuff, I think you need to communicate some, somewhere, yeah.
Ben Kadek, I guess I was also a little bit confused about the geoinformation stuff because with the current CT infrastructure, anyone who sees a certificate could submit it to a log. And so if the goal is to have the geoinformation in the certificate and keep it out of the log, wouldn't it require cooperation from all clients that saw the certificate? Like you would need some way of indicating, please do not log this.
Yeah, I think this is one way to solve, but like, how to say, so like those devices are like internet connected, and they like, but like they are not on public web PKI stuff. And well, yeah, like if like they, because to protect like public PKI safe like trust framework, they need to have some other external system, and sometimes vendor doesn't like that. And anyway, they do that. It might be not like answer, but
so maybe I can try and see if I understand what you were saying. They used to be able to issue certificates and they wouldn't get logged publicly, and so they use this as a configuration management system for the user to identify. And now, because they do want them to be usable on a phone without installing a new CA, they run into the issue that they suddenly have to link to the public PKI, and therefore they have to be submitted in trans, and therefore now there's a problem. So this is, I think, the problem statement. Now, where the redaction is the solution, I'm still confused about, unless everything of that certificate would be encoded in the like fully qualified domain name or something, I don't see how redaction would help you exactly.
So I guess I want to go back to the question mark. Are you assuming that the user will be talking to these devices, the owner of the device will be talking to the device of the certificate, or merely the management system will?
Oh, sorry. User is communicating with like camera system or like
Yeah. So I got the camera system that I bought from somebody, and I'm communicating with it with the certificate, right?
Yeah.
So the question mark puts me in a very different posture than the hash does. because it means that I am unable to verify there are no duplicate certificates issued for that. Because I just see some big pile of certificates issued to manufacturer.com, and I can't verify there wasn't a duplicate issue from me, and so I rely on the manufacturer to do that. Whereas the hash does not have that problem, right? So,
But that's the core problem here appears to be that the CAD form is requiring that all certificates that chain back to a publicly trusted root must be logged. They don't particularly care whether or not they're logged, but they're required to.
but I mean, but if I'm a relying party, I care. If I bought the camera, I care that I do book certifications for my camera, right?
I mean, that's fair enough, but right now they don't do that. Oftentimes the certificates are issued out of the security system rather than out of the publicly trusted route. So.
Sure, but I guess I mean my point is if things are to be on the web and they're be accessed by users, then it's a user interest we have to be protecting. And I guess like I got the initial problem statement here appears to be like we can't build devices that like don't have like big remote compromises, and therefore we want to hide their DNS names. And that just doesn't seem like a very like a great posture to be starting from initially.
So hi, Brian Whitten from Symantec. I'm also not tall. Here we go. So maybe a similar related question. I'm trying to understand the motivation for redaction in these IoT certificates. So I understand very well the motivation for redaction in certificates that are issued by PKIs for an enterprise, where there could be an internal subdomain name that they don't want disclosed to the worldwide public. So I get that. I also understand device certificates that could be used in things like Anima Brewski, as well as we've actually issued 2 billion of them for device certs to be recognized mostly under private CAs, and I understand tying those together under public CAs as well. But those are device certificates about characteristics of the device in terms of who made the device, where, when it was made, manufacturer, compliance certifications, things like that. And I don't understand the motivation for redaction for those device certificates. Now, there is a third type of certificate that is also an IoT certificate, which could be issued by a local certificate authority, which takes that device certificate, which is the device's identity, it's sort of born on information, and then puts that into a context, such as this instance of this industrial robot or this instance of this home door lock is now running in a specific context. And that's where it gets sort of an extension of its identity that ties it into a home, a person's life, or a company's internal usage. And I can understand why that would be sensitive, but in my mind, that would be tied to an internal CA, which might be a private CA, which doesn't necessarily need to be published to a certificate transparency log. So again, I'm trying to understand the motivation for redaction in the IoT use case.
Yeah, I see. For example, this like hotel have like 500 camera, and sometimes like with Java, like we can see that like we can use those camera and see other guys and or presentation. And for that things, like maybe we install, like if it's a private certificate authority stuff, like we install like some private root certificate on the smartphone or something. And we need to like withdraw those certificates from the smartphone or something, like when it's finished. And those like management stuff is, well, it's like,
So if I can build on your example, in my book, it's not hypothetical because we embedded the device certificates that went into the security cameras that protected the Rio Olympics.
yeah.
Okay, so other things needing to authenticate these cameras, fully get that. But I'll go back to what I said before, which is, in that case, they were not chained to a global CA. I see benefits in chaining to a global public CA. Okay, and so the device certificate information would have to conform to all of the, the IETF standards here. But then when it takes an identity for the sort of context of a given hotel that's saying not only is this a Samsung or a Philips or whatever type of camera, but it's actually running in Swiss Hotel or Fairmont, then each of those organizations can choose their own policy for what they disclose, whether it's an OCSP responder model, whether it's short-lived, long-lived. I mean, they can manage their search however they want. So I'll say again, and maybe this can be clarified better on the list than in the short time that we have here, but I still don't see the motivation for redaction for the IoT use case.
Hi, Ben Schwartz.
I just want to draw a parallel here to a case that I've been dealing with, which looks very different but suffers from a similar problem. So I've been working on a system where users can launch their own cloud services that have some sort of cryptographic identity, and ultimately we were forced to basically build a system that doesn't make any use of CAs, and therefore doesn't make any use of any web technologies at all. Because if we did, then the fully qualified domain name of every one of these user-launched services would be published in the CT logs, and our services are somewhat sensitive, and they could easily be victims of some sort of denial of service attack on the basis of that domain name. So because we can't prevent enumeration of those domain names, we can't use SSL at all. It seems to me that this is motivated in a similar way, except instead of a denial of service attack, the concern is something like a remote exploit.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this needs to go back to the CAB forum, because there are some use cases they did not really foresee or plan for, and it's turning into our problem.
Yep.
So are there any other comments? This is a topic that keeps coming up and keeps being quashed and then comes back again. And I think it would be useful to get a sense of the room of whether or not this is something that people feel ought to be worked on here. So at a very high level, just hum if you think that name redaction needs to be addressed by the IETF. Hum yes if you think it does, yes. Hum for no if you don't think we should be, the IETF should be working on it. Ooh, that was interesting. Okay, so I mean, basically, those who expressed an opinion expressed it in favor of taking on some work in this area. So this will go out to the mailing list, where I expect that we'll continue to see sent from some quarters and support from others. So, all right, well, thank you very much. All right, so really the next thing that we needed to talk about was sort of the future of the working group. Right now, where we are is that we've got 3 documents that are deliverables and that are close to being complete. We keep talking about new work. So far, nobody's really brought any in that's mature enough to adopt or fully baked enough to adopt. There are certain things that do keep coming back. Name redaction is one. It sounds like there's renewed interest, and this will go out to the mailing list. Another that I actually think we do need is a client behavior draft, and that needs to be coming out of the browser community, but we haven't gotten a draft. So we can't really do anything about it without a document. So this is something, I don't know if this is an issue that the browser vendors are just not that interested in, and that they feel we can live without or not, but this is, as I said, this is something that won't go away and never seems to come to fruition. So who here is from a browser vendor other than Ecker? Also Mozilla?
Google.
Google, okay.
Well, we're not the CC, heard of them. We're not the CC folks though, so
Okay.
we're in a slightly different corner of the world.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the CC folks often seem to be here.
All right, I guess this needs to go back to the mailing list as well. You know, we do need to just, you know, fish or cut bait. I guess that's the safest thing to, yeah. And the other are other applications that there's interest in logging. One is DNSSEC, the other is binaries and software distributions. And again, it sounds like you guys are going to be talking about DNSSEC over the next and days or weeks. The binary logging stuff, we haven't seen a real proposal other than what Mozilla is doing.
So Mozilla is doing this piggyback thing, but Brian Ford wrote a note to the list about his co-authority stuff, which he'll be discussing at CFRG.
Okay.
Chainiac in particular, which actually looks quite interesting. And I want to see what he's actually presenting. I've read the papers that he pointed to, but that actually I think does hold some promise. So
Okay.
we should keep that in mind.
Okay. All right, so those are those are the main pieces of work that we've talked about. Are there any pieces of work that we haven't talked about? Because basically, as I said, we either need to take on new work or prepare to shut down. So that is kind of that. Any other business?
Yeah, I mean, AD here. I mean, yeah, you're pretty much done with your chartered work. So unless you're like going to have, working with enthusiasm for doing one of these other things, and these documents are live, I mean, like you should go quiescent and pick it up later. I mean, you can have, BT trans if that becomes warm. But if it's not, if it's like, if the state where we're not ready to do it, then probably you should just sit around as a zombie. So I guess I don't know how long you need. That's like maybe a month or two, but if, but one, I guess, or until these documents are finished with ISG. But if we finish the documents with ISG and you guys don't have like consensus to do something else to recharter, then it's probably time to wind down.
Okay.
Victory. I mean, not that's not failure. Victory.
Yeah, no, understood. It's shutting down is a sign of work completed. So, so I see it as a good thing. But yeah, the main thing is that if there is more work that needs to be done, now is the time to bring it forward because there are a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that's been discussed, and just no follow through on it. Unless there's anything else, I think we're done. So we've got minutes. We'll get those posted as soon as I get a copy, and we will take some of this discussion out to the mailing list. Thank you. Oh, blue sheets. Has everybody signed? I'm sorry? So do you think that anything is going to happen? Yeah. Oh, so you're going to I never go to those because I'm not very I find it very stressful to be around humans.